the Busy on Business podcast. Stories of resilient small business owners persistently working smarter to reach their goals despite obstacles. What's going on, everyone? Thanks for checking out another episode of the Busy on Business podcast. Today we have Marc George, who is the owner of Total Athlete Nutrition in Maryland. I've known Marc for a few years now, since college, and Marc did a corporate stint for a little bit and then decided to break out on his own by joining up another business in 2017. And as evident by the significant width in the shoulders, obviously this is a passion business for Marc. So it's a supplement shop, big into health fitness industry. So yeah, Marc, thanks for joining. Long time no talk. And
yeah, absolutely, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man, absolutely. So I kind of alluded to it a little bit, but let's get started. You know, you've got a cool story. Let's talk a little bit about your story and how you got to where you are today.
Sure. So after graduating Maryland, I, similar to you, I went on to do consulting. So I worked for PricewaterhouseCoopers for just over 6 years, about 6.5 years. While I was there, I was doing healthcare consulting primarily. So we were doing a lot of things that had to do at the time with the integration and operations management of the Affordable Care Act, all the laws and regulations that go into it, helping businesses to acclimate to that, change their business models, hire board of directors, looking at their financials, all that stuff. So that was a interesting but 6 years. Definitely some pros and cons. I mean, I got into the whole, getting on a plane and traveling Monday through Thursday thing, and it was cool in the beginning, and then all
I know that grind.
Cool. So the lure of living at hotels and flying and all that stuff was short-lived. But I did learn a lot from it. And actually having that job right out of school and learning a lot of the business processes, because I don't really have I didn't study, I wasn't in the business school, I don't have a financial accounting background. So to me now as a business owner, that was kind of my way to learn all those things, because people ask me, and I can get into this later, but they're always like, well, how did you just leave and start a business and know how to do it? I'm like, well, yeah, because I was consulting other businesses, and realistically, the best part was watching to see all the businesses that we came in to help, what they were doing wrong. Those are the things that I remember the most, to be like, okay, well, let's not do this because I will undo it later. So I did actually get a lot of, I think, transferable skills from PwC through, client relations and just interacting and stuff like that. So after a certain point there, probably about 3 years in of my 6 years, I kind of started to realize maybe this wasn't my long-term plan. But at the same time, it's also, it's a very great career and a great company to work for. Any Big Four company is a fantastic company to work for. So I didn't want to just arbitrarily just up and leave either and just wing it and hope for the best. So I took a lot of time to think about it. Meanwhile, one of my other friends from college that I met very early on at Maryland, that I stayed in connection with all throughout college and afterwards, when he graduated, he actually started Total Athlete Nutrition. It was one store in Pasadena, Maryland, that he had purchased from guys that were really not doing so well with it. And he kind of just took it over. He relocated it in Pasadena. And then all through those 6 years at PwC, I was watching him build the store, and he kept growing it. And I would talk to him, and I would go visit him at the store, and it was always getting better and better and more exciting and growing. And because similar to me, he's very passionate about health and fitness. And so it was just kind of a labor of love thing for him. So I watched him grow that as I was progressively not as happy at my job. And I would always kind of joke with him, though. I was like, hey, dude, if you ever need a business partner or anything, give me a call sometime. And I didn't think it would ever happen. It was just kind of joking conversation. And then at that point, he had grown the business to 3 stores. And it kind of got to the point where it was a little overwhelming for him, because he's, kind of similar mindset to me, probably similar to you, that he's a very organized, very focused person. And so he realized he can't have that level of control that he had at one store, at 3 stores, and be in 3 places at once. So it just happened to work out really good timing wise, that I kind of wanted to step away from consulting. He really needed someone to come in and help him out. So the timing was just great. So like you said, in November of 2017, or kind of leading up to that, it took 6 months to make it all happen. But basically, November, I put in my 2-week notice at PwC. 2 weeks later, I walked in the door and he gave me the key and he was like, "Here's the store, man. Take it away." And I was like, oh. So yeah, it was kind of like, then I kind of did like a crash course in this. Also too, so now, like I said, there was 3 stores. I basically purchased the 1 store, so a third of the business. There are 2 other stores in Maryland as well. We are a locally owned business, only in the state of Maryland. And then my business partner, James, he owns more of the business. He owns the other 2 stores, and now a 3rd store that's on the way that will be opening in Baltimore City. So then eventually now, soon, in probably about a month or so, we'll have 4 total stores in Maryland.
Nice. That's honestly, yeah, it's really fun. We've similar stories in some way, just, me going the family route. I did the Big 4 thing myself. And then, I get that question a lot too, because even though, like you are going in and advising other companies, it's different, right? Like once you're at the Fortune 500 level versus the small business level, the money's different, the people's different, the employees, recruitment's different, everything it's crazy. But I think, for you, and even in some of your answer right there, what enables you to do well with this, and you've been this way since I've known you, but you're always so professional and such, always looking to learn and improve. And I think that's really the key. It's not because you did one thing, kind of leaving your ego and arrogance from that behind. It's like, all right, let me dive in and I'm going to learn and I'm going to adapt and let's figure this thing out,
And it's funny you say that about ego, because it's like, I don't like to think I'm like an ego-driven person, but it was hard for me because when I was started to tell my family and my close friends that, I was going to leave PwC, this like nice, great, glamorous job. And like, everyone's like, "Oh, how could you ever leave?" I'm like, it's not about, the company never did anything wrong to me.
Sure.
I just want a different opportunity, but it was hard because I didn't realize that I'd gotten used to, like when people say, "What do you do?" And I say, "I work for PwC," and like everyone's like, "Oh, wow, that's so great!" Like they're so impressed by it. So it was hard almost to leave that comfort of just the name itself, the security of such a huge company, like you said, that does very well for itself. That's very professional, very organized. And then also too, the other part of it, from leaving something like that to go into retail at that time, or even still today, when everyone would just tell me, "You're stupid because Amazon's just going to crush you. Like you're just going to be this small, tiny fish in this huge pond that's all going, all digital, all online. Retail's dead. What are you doing? Like you're going backwards." So like it was a very challenging, I guess, mental hurdle to get over, because yes, people that were close to me were supportive, but I felt like they were being supportive because they felt obligated to, but realistically in their head, they're like, "He's an idiot. He's never going to make it," because the way the world is trending is the opposite of the way he seems to be going.
Sure. No, I know exactly what I mean. Even here, especially because I studied engineering undergrad. So then, people would come in and that kind of stuff, and they'd be like, "Oh, like, it's so wonderful you're joining the family thing." Like, always like, a little condescendingly, and then it's like,
it's so
condescending. Yeah. It's like, "Oh, what are you going to school to be a pharmacist or something like that?" I'm like, "Oh, no, actually, I already graduated years ago." And they're like, "Oh," yeah. And then I'm like, "And I studied engineering." They're like, "What the hell are you doing with your life right now?" But it's funny because I would argue in some ways, not that there's ever anything that doesn't have risk associated with it, but like, being a pencil pusher in some places your entire life versus actually, taking the plunge and being here. And there's a lot of benefits to being a small business owner and, doing your own thing and not to mention opportunities to learn and grow and that kind of stuff too, versus, not, again, like I think there's pros and cons either way, and not that there's one right answer, but a lot of people who are just accustomed to the supposed security at those jobs don't necessarily always understand, and especially, coming into a business that's, all right, this exists. It's time. I can improve this. I can take it. I can, change it my own way and do those kinds of things. Especially if we're starting from something from like completely nothing too. There's different challenges and different things all over the place,
Absolutely. And it's, again, now funny you say that too, because 2 things I would say. One is like, in the time of what I was doing, my biggest client at PwC was, CMS, the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services. And what we were doing there was help, I'm sure I've talked to you about this, we were helping this program called the Co-op program, which were small non-for-profit public health insurance companies that they're funded by the Affordable Care Act. There was like $2.5 billion that went to them, which now is all gone. But the idea was we're supposed to do one of these co-ops in every single state to give affordable access to healthcare to everyone.
Interesting.
regardless. But they were funded by the government, even though they were private companies, but they were funded by the government through the Affordable Care Act. So we were, for basically 3 of the 6 years, I was going to all startup businesses. So I really did, not only, like I said earlier, like did I have the ability to just learn from the clients that I had, but I was really immersed unknowingly in that entrepreneurial mindset already, because I was watching entrepreneurs start up the co-ops. So like you said, I could see from them the pros and cons of big business versus small, but in the end, it actually kind of helped me out, because my experience was mostly focused on startups that were kind of already, like, we came in about a year into the mix. So they were already there. They've gone through the initial, like, super grind of this true startup phase. And then we were coming in to say, okay, now that you've kind of been here for a little bit, how can we then further improve? And then also the regulations, but that's the boring stuff.
Yeah.
And it was kind of my experience here that, like I mentioned, Tyler had started Total Athlete Nutrition. The Columbia store that I purchased was already there for about a year. And then I was coming in to kind of say, okay, this is where we are. This is our baseline, but how can we now level up? How can we make it even better? Because it already is good, but how can we go from good to great? So it really kind of mirrored what I was doing at PwC without I knowing it or planning it. So that was kind of cool. But there's also part of me that feels almost not like a true entrepreneur, because I missed that ground zero. I have zero customers, I have no store, and I have to build it from literally the ground up. And I don't know why I feel like slighted by that, but like, because that's like the worst, hardest part, but I feel like I missed out on that. And sometimes I look at other entrepreneurs, I'm like, I'm not as good as them because I didn't grind in the very beginning. Like,
Yeah. I know what you mean. I kind of have the same feeling coming here sometimes. Like, my grandfather started a business in the 60s, so it's like, well, I'm here, but it's like, it's different taking something that exists and, trimming the fat or improving things first. So I get a little bit of entrepreneurs imposter syndrome sometimes as well. So I know where you're coming from. But so let's talk about some of, like you mentioned, different things you did. And then, I know you guys made a pretty smart move at the time, or a big investment, to kind of join up with the gym next door and kind of, partner in some ways with them. And then obviously nothing secret about this now, but then COVID hit, and then that just kind of just massively shook the entire fitness industry. So I guess talk about, how you guys have been in the last, few months since COVID and everything, what you guys have been doing to try and.
Yeah, sure. So like you said, my original Columbia store was, here in Columbia, Maryland, but about 10 minutes away. There was a physical therapist that was next to me there called Catalyst, and he and his wife are the owners of the gym that you mentioned that I've now relocated my store to about 10 minutes down the road to be strategically connected to their gym. They opened this really great training facility called Chiseled Life. It's really probably a very unique gym that there's not many like it really at all in the state of Maryland. So they did something very special. So when they came to me with the opportunity to say, do you want us to carve out a space for your retail store in our gym? It was really a no-brainer to me, because I'm picking myself up and putting myself directly in front of my customer base at that point, as fitness people, gym people, health enthusiasts, whatever you want to call it. So it was a very positive strategic move. We moved here last May, so May of 2019. So about just shy of a year, 9 months into it is when all the COVID stuff happened. So then now immediately, and gyms, were one of the first things to close, at least in Maryland. So now this great positive strategic move, not that it's anyone's fault, but then became a huge hurdle and roadblock for me, because the gym was shut off. That's really my number one source of foot traffic day to day. So now I was in this kind of scramble mode of like, wow, my direct funnel of people that I purposely moved to be in front of is now completely shut off to me. So what do I do? We are, like I mentioned, we are a locally owned business here just in Maryland. We do have an online store and we have an online presence, but it's really not that, we don't focus on it that much, because our brick and mortar experience really lends itself to the in-person conversations. And that ties back to what I was saying about when everyone told me, well, how are you going to make it? Amazon's just going to crush you, all that stuff. Because of that, we're very aware of that. We really do prioritize the in-person interactions we have in our stores. It's not that I'm speaking poorly of other businesses, but it's not just like a GNC or a vitamin shop where you're in and out. There's no personal connection. They don't know your name. They don't remember what you ordered. They just want to make a sale, and whatever is the highest commission that month, they push it and then you leave. We're aware of that. So, we are very personal with our customers. We get to know them. And it's more of like that kind of like family environment, similar to how I'm sure it is for you, because
yeah, exactly.
People can walk in and say, hey, Vince, and you know their name, you know what they're getting, all that stuff. So with that said, now that was kind of cut off, like, what do we do? So it was kind of like a scramble mode, as I'm sure a lot of people were in. And learning to, this is something I probably took and learned mostly from PwC, that learning to adapt as soon as possible after assessing like where the market's going or what is happening is really, really an important trait and skill to have. So we kind of took a step back and realized, okay, we don't really have an online presence, but we need to create one as soon as possible. But that said, because we haven't had one in the past, yeah, we updated our website and we made it more accessible, but then we needed to get the word out that it was updated and changed because no one really looks at it. So fortunately, I know that we've kind of talked about this in side conversations we've had. The biggest thing for me was social media. Social media, while I have my qualms about it, and it's kind of this love-hate relationship with it.
Oh, yeah. Necessary evil.
It is a necessary evil, but to me, I would say social media, specifically Instagram, because for some reason there's this huge tie between fitness and Instagram, and there's a lot of presence of fitness in the fitness industry on Instagram. That was my platform to get it out there that, hey, we've updated our model slightly due to, the changing world that everyone's now facing, and this is what we're doing going forward. Like I said, we've talked about it before. To me, Instagram is like a free all-day commercial for your business. And for a small business with limited marketing budget and stuff like that, anything that's free is great to me. I'm going to take advantage of it as much as I possibly can. And so I really found a lot of value in finding and utilizing social media, but then I even had to do research on how to better use social media and how to access it, because it's not the same as just a personal Instagram account where you're like, hey, this is my life, this is what I'm doing. Like, you really have to be strategic about it. But once you learn, just the basics of it, it really was a great way to access many people all at once and have a very large reach on an ongoing, continuous basis. That was also personal because, like for stories, for example, you can post them all day long and show people, this is our website, here's a link to it, this is what we're doing. But then they can also directly contact you if they have questions about it too.
Sure.
So it made it a massive net that I could cast out, but also an individual channel for people to come back to me if they had questions about it.
Sure. So I see the recurring theme here is obviously whether you were kind of just joining or starting, or even when you made the decision to move to the gym, or even then when you're like, crap, like now we got to kind of make an adjustment. You're taking a step back, looking, doing some analysis, figuring out your next move, and then executing, right? And then learning as you go, like, okay, well, now I got to get better at social media. So something that I've struggled with, something that I think a lot of small business owners struggle with too, is like, how do you get over feeling spammy, especially when you're using your personal account to help grow your business account, and when you're trying to just start getting out there, it's easy to just be like, here's protein powder every day, or here's this every day. How do you kind of bridge the gap and just like get over that awkwardness?
Yeah, that's a really great question. It's something I still struggle with. I have these waves where I'm like all in all day long. And I'm like, wow, I'm really annoying. No one wants to hear from me anymore. But that's also not good, because consistency, I've learned, is better. The short answer is it just takes time doing it. I found like the only way to get over that awkward feeling is to just keep doing it and feel comfortable doing it. Because to be honest, there's still times when like I just said, it's like, I don't really want to do this anymore because I don't think people are receptive to it. But then just when you are thinking that, someone will respond to something you posted and be like, oh, that's awesome. I didn't know you had XYZ product. When can I get it? How can I get it? I'll be in today.
Right.
See you soon. And when you see those types of responses, and it helps to, not that I'm looking for validation necessarily, but it helps to justify the fact that like what you're doing is actually reaching real people and you're having a connection with them. I think that's the best way to help groom yourself to be more comfortable with it. But like I said, I know we've talked about it many times. Like, I definitely had that feeling of, this is just borderline annoying at this point, because it really is every day and it is a little repetitive. But at the same time, especially March through June or whatever that time period was of everything being up in the air, it was kind of just like a sink or swim moment. So I'm like, hey,
Yeah.
at the expense of being slightly annoying, this is my business at the end of the day, and I'm going to do whatever it takes
Sure.
to get the word out there. And if people are really that bothered by it, okay, they don't have to follow me anymore. Or they don't have to pay attention. That's fine. But I know that there are people out there that do want to see these things. So I'm just going to keep doing it and hope that not everyone hates me by the end of quarantine. So that really was, I think, if there wasn't the, I guess I'll call it the pressure of, like the uncertainty of what's going to happen during COVID and the shutdown and quarantine, I probably wouldn't have done it as, I guess, aggressively as I did. But there was that pressure of, if I don't do this every day, I might not have any sales. And even though I was able to remain open the entire time, if no one's coming in and no one's buying it online, why am I even open at that point? So it was just
right.
it was like sink or swim. So a small business, you have to do what you have to do at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Comfortable or not.
No, yeah, we went through something similar. We shut down in March before the state mandated it. Because we have some of our two of our pharmacists here are from Korea, and they were, hearing all kinds of stuff from Korea and like what was going on there. So, they got us to be super proactive about it. So we shut down early, and then, we had a tiny area open. We were doing mass clean, like we were everything from day one. And then immediately insurance companies stopped paying us. And we had some other operational issues here that, my dad and I kind of been butting heads about over the years, and, we honestly, like, I wasn't sure if we were going to, make it through or whatever. And it was just, it's kind of, same thing, like do or die. I think I took this from a Nike shirt or someone said it, but no pressure, no diamonds or whatever,
Yeah, exactly.
And like, we made some massive changes within like a month or two. Like we reduced our inventory on hand by like 45% or almost 50%. And like, we got so much, and our level of service went up too. Cause we were just, planning better. Like, okay, I know these people are going to probably come back at this time. Let's keep a relationship. Let's stay in touch. We know the first name basis thing. Let's call people. Let's say, hey, you guys need this right now, immune support, this and that. Or like, you need hand sanitizer. We were making hand sanitizer at the time too, because no one could get it. So like, you kind of just gotta, I mean, that is what it is. Like you come up with a plan, think like, okay, we just got to buckle down and do it. And, whatever. And the annoying thing is like, I'm like, crap, like we did this all in 2-3 months. Like, imagine if we had been doing this the whole time.
That's kind of what I thought. I'm like, and I've tried to now implement some of the things that I was doing that I was forced to only do now and keep them going. Just so that, I realized, hey, the business, okay, wasn't anywhere close to what it was normally during quarantine and all the shutdown, but like I was able to, I'm still here. So like, it wasn't terrible either. And now I, like you said, I need to remember, okay, I learned a lot during that time and we shifted and adjusted. So let's keep the things that worked during that time in. And as we move back to normalizing our business too, because then you can, you're attacking it from two different avenues now.
Right.
You shouldn't forget the things that you learned in that time of need to adapt and just now dump them again and go back to how you were. That's not really evolving at that point. That's, you're just, it was just a temporary fix. So you need to keep it in. And I think that you've realized, hey, these things did work too. So let's keep doing these and then do all the other things we previously did that also worked.
Yeah. It's the same thing you said with social media. And it's the same thing, like, when it comes to working out and fitness. And it's the same thing with like, consistency in what you do most of the time matters more than what you do some of the time, so literally, I think that applies to basically everything you can think of in life, so, keeping up that consistency or trying to stay organized, keep up that consistency. I got pretty deep into the 80-20 rule too, like 80%, if you look like, there's some things that, maybe they may be like, some small portion of it, but it has like an 80% impact on everything else. So let me just, this is what we can do right now. Like, let me just focus on, I know this 80% is going to make a difference. If I focus on these couple of things, it'll change most of it. You know what I mean? So like really being intentional with how you're spending your time and effort too. You also mentioned, sorry, what were you going to say?
I was just going to say, I think it's interesting that this kind of goes to the social media thing and also to what you said about calling people that, yes, while it could be considered or viewed as annoying sometimes, like post like every single day, like, hey, this is some protein if you need it. This is vitamin C if you need it. This is immune support if you need it. For some reason, and this is, I guess, like human psychology, which not that I studied it, but like I'm learning it through all of this. It's like sometimes people do need to see something 2, 3, 4 times before they're convinced that they're going to buy it. Posting once and never talking about it again, for some reason, people can just dismiss it the first time. But if they see it, even if they're subconsciously thinking, wow, this is like the 5th time this guy's posted about this stupid thing, that same 5th time, they could be like, but you know what? I think I really do want that. Or just like you said, you picked up the phone and you called people that you knew most likely would need hand sanitizer or immune support. They probably never would have, not never, but there's a likelihood they would never have reached out to you. Even though they knew they needed it, but they didn't want to reach out to you. But the fact that you picked up the phone and called them, they're like, wow, thanks for the call, Vince. I did think I needed that. And you just reminded me I needed it. Like sometimes people just need that extra to get there. And it's a little frustrating, but once you learn that, you can just use it and, you know, to better improve your business. That's all.
Yeah. Well, I think it's all in your approach too, right? Like I'm sure you feel similarly based on how you've described, you know, the relationships with your customers and that kind of stuff. But I know for a fact that, you know, people coming here even are going to GNC and I know they're going to these other places.
Same here, for sure.
Yeah, exactly. So like, if they're not going to get it from here, they're going to get it from somewhere else. So at least I can, you know, hey, like sometimes, you know, we try to, you know, we'll do some upselling or those kinds of things too. And sometimes our staff will be a little bit like, I don't know, it's uncomfortable. Like same things we talk about, which is, it is. I feel like it's uncomfortable at times too, but they're getting it somewhere else and we can offer them, you know, one, high quality product, but two, you know, that relationship where we can actually, hey, like, you know, maybe you don't need this, maybe this would be better, maybe that, like, you know, and by keeping up that relationship and kind of approaching it from that way, I guess like a, you know, an honest perspective or a genuine perspective, you know, it builds a relationship and you'll keep a recurring customer as opposed to someone at GNC, you need vitamin C and you need this, here you go, have a nice day, you know what I mean?
Exactly.
So,
that authenticity, I think, for small businesses is what brings people back. Because like you said, the one thing that I'm very, you know, passionate about, and I tell my employees the same thing, is like, yes, I understand retail sales. I hate sales because I hate being those like salesy, like just over the top people that push, like you said. I don't like that feeling at all. So I've made it a very strong point to never feel like I know I'm selling things to people, but I don't want them to ever feel like they're being sold. I rather approach it like you just said, and as you guys do, from an authentic, genuine perspective, and really focus on the educational piece of things. And if I can sit there for 30 minutes and describe you the difference between whey protein isolate and whey protein concentrate, people are like, wow, you really care about this stuff. Like unnecessary information about protein. But then it makes them think about it. Like, if you care this much about the products on your shelf, you probably care this much about your customer base too.
Right.
And that authentic relationship is then what brings them back, because they're like, well, the other guy just pushed something down my throat and then I left and I felt, you know, like I didn't get anything out of it. So there are many times where people come into the store, we could have a 30-minute conversation about whatever they're looking for, and I give them a lot of education and knowledge. And then I tell them, you know what, don't buy anything today. Go home, do your own research, and make sure that what I'm telling you, you're comfortable with and you actually understand. And sure enough, I would say 9.5 times out of 10, they go back home, then they come back in like, hey man, everything that we talked about last time was really helpful. You really know what you're talking about. I did my own research and now I'm ready to purchase something. It's just in the moment when I tell them, don't buy anything, leave, they look at me puzzled. They're like, isn't your job to tell me something right now? Like, you're not talking about that. But I think it makes a big difference because again, it's authentic and it's real.
Yeah. And it provides like a better long-term perspective on the business than just, you know, short-term making that one sale the one time, you know?
Yep, exactly.
So speaking of relationships, we talked about this a little bit offline as well, but we've talked about how, you know, you've maintained, you know, business relationships and obviously, you know, had some relationships before all this happened. So how have those business relationships outside of just specifically with your customers, you know, kind of helped improve your business and, you know, helped you during COVID, if that's relevant as well?
So I would say the most obvious business relationship, again, is going back to the beginning of all this, not necessarily COVID, but just like improving business in general, is with my friend Tyler, because we started coincidentally bartending together at University of Maryland. But even though that was a much different setting, the reason why we gravitated toward each other so much is because even though it was a completely a different industry, we realized we had a similar mindset of how to approach work, our work ethic and things like that. And as we both grew in our respective fields, we stayed connected through a business kind of conversation, because we just knew that we could depend on each other, we could trust each other, and we had the same approach to business, which is why I was so willing and avidly pursuing to go into business with him when I did. And then from there, I would say that in the beginning, although I was fortunate enough to walk in day one with an existing customer base, because the store was already alive and well at the time when I bought it, I still knew I needed to grow it. So I immediately kind of tapped into my network of, my colleagues at PwC that I knew that, like we had like fitness groups and things like that there. So I knew, okay, I know these guys, I just left there. Let me see what they need and help them reach their fitness goals. I obviously tapped into our fraternity network because we were both heavily involved in that. And not only my own fraternity, but just being in the IFC and all that stuff too. Like I knew a lot of people from Maryland. I knew a lot of people that, had just recently graduated, and, I'm watching them through social media and like they're into health and fitness. So let me reach out to them as well and see, through that network what they might need. And then also too, still utilizing my mentors from PwC from that business standpoint to go back to them. And, when I reached some sticking points and I didn't really know how to handle things, yes, their accounting and finance are on a whole different level of numbers and stuff like that. But, they've been doing this for 20, 30 years. And so I could depend on them to help me to learn, different business models and how to do process improvement and stuff like that. Especially my partner at the time when he was there, like he's the top dog there. So, if I have any questions, I know I can go to him because he's always willing to help anyone.
Sure. What would you say? So for me personally, switching from that corporate world to the small business world, at times I felt a little isolated, and it's on me, obviously, ultimately to build and maintain relationships. But sometimes it's like very easy to just kind of put your head down and just like you're in the grind and like you're waking up and you're coming to your business and you're trying to grow and you're trying to do whatever. How do you think that you have, do you have any tricks, I guess, for maintaining that network or keeping that network, active, I guess, while you're kind of focusing on your small business? It's different in the corporate world, right? Where you're like putting like, oh, there's a networking event, there's a happy hour, and this thing, That's
a really good question, and it's something I struggled with too, because you're right. You do feel isolated, and sometimes it's like, part of it was probably self-inflicting. I probably made up a lot of it in my own head.
Sure.
But some of it was real. Like, I do think there was kind of like a stigma when I told my colleagues, I'm leaving and this is what I'm doing. They kind of like scoff at it, because there are unfortunately some people in the Big Four that have that like nose in the air, like super Big Four mentality of like, I'm better than everyone because I work at the Big Four. I'm like, okay, man, relax. But like, it was hard to stay in contact with, because I think they kind of view you as taking a step down while they're taking a step up. But the people that I remained closest with were the ones that I knew that, I really did have a great working relationship with them. And we were also, it's not like I was hanging out with them every weekend, but like we were friends beyond just our work. And so I really used them the most to lean on, because I knew I could trust them and I had a good relationship. And then I would almost, like check in on other people through them in a way, just to make sure and then hopefully like they could be like, hey, Dan, I just talked to Mark and he asked about you. So like maybe that would then, persuade them to, still want to reach out to me too and talk about it. The other thing too is, honestly, even though this isn't the same type of business setting, because, I don't wear a suit and tie to work every day. I wear a t-shirt and sweatpants, but like I still avidly use LinkedIn. And because I grew my LinkedIn presence at PwC, one, because we had to, but two, because it's a great business tool. And I really like to continue to use that again to, like see how people are moving and progressing through their careers in that corporate world, but still, reaching out to them, but it doesn't feel as informal as like Facebook or Instagram. So I can do it and send messages. And, I've messaged people on LinkedIn and just said, hey man, it's been a while. I really just want to, catch you up. This is what I've been doing. I'd love to hear what you're doing. And not everyone responds, but I think that's another really great way to keep those business connections going, and not having that isolated feeling of now I've removed myself from the Big Four world. So like I'm unwanted and no one wants to talk to me anymore and all that stuff.
Yeah, no, I definitely know what you mean. I've tried to do the same thing on LinkedIn. And what's the ironic thing about that too is like, then it almost feels like you're selling and annoying again in a different way sometimes. It's like always like but I guess that's just how life is these days, especially when you're doing your own thing and, kind of, you just gotta get over that, I guess. And the more you put yourself out there and do it, and I've tried to be, okay, I'm going to reach out to like, 5 people on LinkedIn or wherever to like this week, or like try to at least set goals and hold myself accountable to that.
But you're right. Like, I bet you there are some people that when they see that message and they know it's coming from a person that's no longer with the company or in the industry, they're like, well, what does he want? He must want something from me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, man, I just want to see how you're doing and like see how everything's going for you.
Yeah.
I'm
Well,
still curious about, the firm.
Sure.
I'd like to know what's going on. I still like follow PwC. I still see what they're doing. I'm still very interested in their client work because, again, I didn't leave on bad terms. I loved what I was doing. The type of work I was doing. I just didn't really like the lifestyle.
Sure.
So yeah, I want to stay connected to it. So it's but not everyone sees it that way. So
yeah, it's funny because I find myself being pretty hypocritical sometimes because I'll sit there on the one hand be like, I'm just trying to like say what's up. Like, I'm not trying to like sell anything or do anything. And then on the flip side, I see a bunch of people messaging me. It's like, oh my God, what are you selling? What do you want?
Like, I was just like not even open the message because like he definitely, yeah, you're right. I didn't realize about myself, but that's definitely true.
How about for vendors? I know it seems like from everything you posted online that you have some good relationships with some vendors. Do you you have some specific vendors that you kind of, have better relationships with and like just focus on building those relationships, and how has that helped you with your
Absolutely.
business?
And I should have brought that up when you asked about like how you're maintaining relationships with people, because it's actually funny because this kind of answers this question. It goes, what we were just saying. It's ironic that coincidental that the vendors I have the closest relationship on are the ones that never try to sell me anything. There are some vendors, and we've definitely talked about this. They call me every week, like, hey man, do you need this? Do you need that? I'm like, I kind of take offense to this because I know how to manage my inventory. So if I order something, I would look in my system, I get notifications, and I would order it. So if I needed it, trust me, I would pick up the phone and call you or text you or email you, whatever. So, and I'll have those conversations. I'll be like, look, I'm not trying to be rude, but if I need something, I will let you know. You don't have to check on me every week. You don't have to babysit me. I'm capable of doing this on my own. Thank you. And sure enough, next Monday they'll call like, hey bro, just checking in again. I'm like, okay, leave me alone. But the fact is that, there's a few brands, not that the brands really matter, but the Core Nutritionals, Project AD, NutriBio, there are certain brands in my stores that I have real relationship. Like, I view these guys as friends first at this point. Patrick, Joey, Mike, the guys that are the sales reps there, and I don't view them as sales. Like, when I see them calling me or texting me, I'm not like, oh, it's a sales call, here we go. Like, I look forward to talking to them because there are times where they could call me and we don't even talk about buying inventory or purchasing. They're just calling to really know, hey, they're the guys that would call me during the shutdown, like, hey man, I'm just checking in on you to make sure, like, you're still mentally okay with all this. Like, how is the store doing? How are you holding up? And things like that. And we never once talk about what products do you need? What do you want to order and anything? Because they respect that space and they know, hey, if he needs something, he'll order it and he'll let me know. So it really does. It's the same type of relationship building that we've both done in client service industry too, that like, you start from, it's a little more formal, but then you get to the point where you really do develop that relationship. You can trust each other, be authentic, just like we talked about with the sales part of things. And then it really becomes a true working relationship that's mutually beneficial. Those are always the guys I call first. So like, I'm having an event at the store, I want them to come in person to help promote their brands. So it's like, the more you build that relationship, then the more I welcome them into my business, the more I sell their products over the other products because I know I can trust the actual product. So it kind of transcends the entire business, not even just from the inventory purchasing standpoint, but from the way I sell things, the way I bring people into the store, the way I talk about certain brands. It all kind of clicks together when you look at it a big picture.
Yeah, no, I feel that the same way here too. Sometimes supplement related, sometimes just like, our primary wholesaler here. And I think especially like doubling down on those, partners who have proven that they're on your team and are in this like, together, and really focusing on those relationships. Some of our wholesalers have, especially when we've had a little more cash flow challenges lately, they've been like, hey, yeah, let's give you some better terms. Like, we still got to pay it and everything, but like, or maybe pay a little bit here and then pay a little bit there and that kind of stuff. And that like,
happen, yeah.
Yeah. And that's like been huge, and that, not that you go into a relationship like, all right, what can you do for me? What can you know what I mean? But like in hindsight now, it's like, holy crap, like if not for some of that stuff, like it would have been a lot tougher. And it's all because we built these foundational relationships with other vendors and that kind of stuff too. So, ironically, based off what we were just talking about, as much as it can be annoying, like dealing with, sales and spam and that kind of stuff too. It's like, that without that sometimes, or without those initial relationships, it makes things a lot better in a lot of ways.
Oh, it definitely does. And especially I saw that, like you mentioned, during these past few months, because, everyone was in some sort of financial bind in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
But because I was still open, I still needed to order inventory, but I was so afraid to do it because I'm like, I don't want to stock my shelves, run out my business credit card, and then I'm not selling anything, and I'm in this hole. So,
sure.
But I needed certain things for sure. So the guys that I could lean on and rely on the most are the ones that I would call and say, hey man, like I really need XYZ product, but like I really can't put it all on my card right now. I can't pay the full invoice. Can we do anything? And there were some people like, no, we don't extend our terms, whatever. I'm like, okay, fine, then I'm not going to have any of your products. But sure enough, those guys that I knew I could rely on the most, they're like, yeah, of course, man, we got you because we know we can trust you. You're not going to burn us down the line later. And we want you to sustain your business. So
sure.
Again, it does take time to get there with the relationship.
Yeah.
But now that I know that there are 3 to 4 guys that I can really depend on as the sales reps that I can rely on for that, it makes me feel more at ease because I know if I ever in a bind again, I know who I can rely on. And they know that I would, whatever I can do for them, even though they're a huge business and I'm a small business, I help them too. I don't ever want it to feel one-sided.
Yeah, of course.
It has to be mutually beneficial. And as long as they're getting the benefit out of it, then so am I. So it works out well.
No, it makes sense. Is there anything else that you feel like you want to talk about, like especially maybe COVID related or operationally with your business, or any other kind of challenges you felt like you had to deal with and overcome lately, or anything like that?
Yeah, I would say that the other component to everything that happened now is like with COVID is we kind of already touched on it, but what's next? What do we do now? And
Sure.
I think I have it down, but I don't really know for sure yet because again, the one part we talked about was, okay, what worked before COVID, what worked during, how do we now amalgamate those things together and move forward with this new model of a little bit of this and a little bit of that. But even still, it's now the thought, because I've heard people already bring this up, the other thought is, well, what if this happens again? What if there's another full shutdown? And now that's like looming over my head because now at least the good thing is I know we've all been through it once. So there's some things you can be a little bit more prepared, but it's also like everything with this has been so unpredictable. It's like, well, what if it happens again, but it looks very different? Will I be prepared? So it's more of this unknown stressor of what might happen. Could it happen again? Am I ready? I don't know if I'm ready. So I don't really have an answer for any of this yet, but that's now what I'm looking for, like towards in the future of understanding, yes, things finally seem to be normalizing a little bit and getting quote unquote better as best as they can be.
Sure.
But that other thought is still out there of what else could happen, or am I truly prepared for another, I don't know, event that may or may not occur.
Sure. No, but I mean, I think that's the right mentality and what's enabled you to be successful and to, survive through this time too. It's, the ones from what I've experienced, the people who are not making it are the ones who, had a lot of problems beforehand. Those problems were exposed and then they, were problems or, different business models, whatever, they were exposed. They didn't adapt or do anything. Or now that it's about to happen again, they're not planning for the future again. It all comes back to like, okay, what's next, or how am I doing? You know what I mean? And there are some industries and whatever that's just like, yeah, that really sucks. Like like even gyms, for example, like unless people are going online training online now, or like by us, there are some people doing stuff in the parks or in their parking lots or whatever they can. Even though that's the last place I'd want to work out right now is in a parking lot, but.
Yeah.
It's different industries have different degrees of challenges, but I mean ultimately if you're not trying to adapt or trying to think about what's going to happen, how you're going to grow and improve in the future or be prepared if this happens again, then it's kind of like the definition of insanity. Why would you do the same thing, expect a different result next time?
Exactly.
So.
And I guess it's not my business, but the gym that I'm connected to here, Chiseled, like I watched that happen with them, that there's only so much they could do. I mean, the state said gyms have to close.
Sure. Yeah, it's tough.
okay, all of the revenue from the gym is billing memberships, but we can no longer bill revenue or bill memberships. So now what do we do? Like you're kind of stuck for some industries and some businesses, there's really only so much you can do.
Yeah.
It was cool then to at least watch the trainers from the gym, the ones that did adapt and change and move very quickly to all online training or all outside training or whatever. It was very clear to me which ones had that mindset of, I need to change as fast as possible and kind of roll with the punches and make it work. And then other ones that, for better or for worse, they kind of decided maybe I'm just going to take a break from training for a little bit. And that's fine if that's what was best for them. But it's interesting to see, one, watching myself change and adapt, but also watching how other business owners like them, talking to you, seeing everyone change accordingly. And then, because I can learn from that too. There might be things that you did with your business that I'm like, man, Vince did X, Y, Z to change theirs, and I wish I had done some of those things too. So now at least I know in the future, God forbid this happens again in some capacity, there are some things I could take into that next wave of this if we ever get there.
Sure. No, totally. And honestly, that's one of the reasons I started doing this too. And partially it was like
great for that very reason.
Yeah. It was like a way for me to, maintain relationships too. And part of it is I just love learning and hearing about what other people are doing. And, maybe it's something I can get better at too, and also I'm just a nerd and love talking about this stuff. So, but yeah, cool, man. All right. Well, I will cut the recording here. It's been good talking to you. Hopefully everything, continues to pick up down there in Maryland. And it looks like you've still got a lot of gym time on your hands, so that's good too.
Yeah, that was good. Luckily, I didn't have to stop that too much. So
yeah.
I would absolutely lose my mind if I had to stop that, and my business was like tanking at the same time.
So. Yeah. No, I've cut down from actually it's funny. I cut down to 2 days a week now. It's a couple dumbbells, little things like that. And it's funny because before I'd be up at 6 every day at the gym, 6 days a week, 5 days a week minimum. And now I'm 2 a days or not 2 days, geez, 2 a week. And I'm getting in at 7. I'm like, oh my God, how did I ever, it's maybe I'm just getting old, who knows? But cool, man. All right. Well, thanks for joining, and I will talk to you soon.
Cool. Thanks for having me, Vince. I appreciate it.
Welcome to the takeaways section of the Busy on Business podcast from this episode with Marc George from Total Athlete Nutrition. Here are a couple key points that I wanted to re-emphasize that I thought Marc mentioned throughout the episode. One, especially if you're coming from the corporate world, you may have a lot more transferable skills for starting a small business or joining a small business than you actually realize. So don't forget, it's really easy to get overwhelmed, especially when you're jumping into something new. And Marc even was like, I got the keys on day one. I was like, okay, what now? You know what I mean? So don't be afraid to take a step back and really, put some actual thought into it on day one or even day 50 if something changes, Don't be afraid to do that. And also, if you don't have a skill that you realize you might need, maybe finance or maybe inventory management you've never really done before, whatever it might be, don't be afraid to ask for help. There are a lot of people who have done these kinds of things before, and starting a relationship with someone who knows how to do those things will be beneficial to you. We also talked about a couple mental health sort of related challenges for small business owners that honestly it really resonated with me because I feel these things a lot. One was isolation in small business, meaning, in the corporate world, sometimes there's all kinds of networking events. There's a lot more people around here. You're kind of in a little bubble with the people you work with. And maybe it's, a couple people if you have a smaller shop, or maybe it's a few more. But regardless, you're kind of isolated. We also talked about entrepreneur imposter syndrome, meaning in my case for joining a family business, and Marc's case for, taking over an existing store within a bigger business. You kind of don't feel like you were there from day one, and it's tough to kind of feel like, oh, I'm a real entrepreneur and I'm doing well. And to that, I'll say what really matters at the end of the day is the numbers. The numbers work. What you're doing makes sense. And who cares where it came from and who cares how you got there? All that matters is, you're working hard and you're trying to improve something and you're trying to make something for yourself, for your family, or however you're going to use the business going forward. There's a lot of benefits. And honestly, there's a lot of challenges to coming into an existing business and taking over something that may not have been running efficiently and effectively too. So there's a lot of different things. The grass is always greener on the other side. Don't let that hold you back. The last mental health thing we talked about was retail and small business naysayers. There are a lot of people who are going to tell you, don't do that, it's too risky. There are a lot of people who are going to tell you, oh, Amazon will put you out of business, this and this and that. I'm not saying they're not right or they're not wrong, but think about who you're talking to sometimes. If you're talking to someone who has never started a small business, never worked in a small business, then why are you going to look to them for advice on small business? All that matters at the end of the day is the numbers in your business. If the numbers are working, if they're making sense, if you're continuing to grow, then that's amazing. Who cares what they have to say? And who cares if people are, acting condescendingly if you came from the corporate world too? I've dealt with that personally myself, just like Mark has. All that matters is the numbers. And if things are changing and maybe not going the way you want, then it's up to you to kind of figure out, take a step back, plan, and adapt. Which leads me to my next point, which is take a step back, plan, and adapt. Especially with COVID, Mark made what at the time looked like an amazing move to move his shop into a gym to get the foot traffic there. And of course, unfortunately, no one could have seen COVID coming, but that threw a major monkey wrench in the operation there. He took a breath. He said, okay, what do I need to do, or what can I do to kind of survive and adapt and make it work through this tough time? For him, it was social media. For him, it was leaning into some partnerships with wholesalers and that kind of stuff. So doing those kinds of things, it's a time when you can actually take some steps forward in your business. They needed to work on social media and their website and all that kind of stuff. And here they kind of forced the issue. And now they actually took care of it. So take a step back, make a plan, and execute that plan. It's much better to do that than just to sit there and kind of be afraid or sit there and yell. That's not going to get you anywhere. It's not going to lead you to success. I know it's a lot easier said than done in times like this, but that's really the truth. That leads me to my next point, which is you never know who's watching. So I know social media can feel spammy. I know social media can be annoying at times, but you never know who you're going to reach and who you're going to connect with by posting something. Sometimes it may feel like you're reaching no one. I've felt that way before too. But ultimately, and this ties into the previous point as well, you need to do what's best for your business. Doesn't matter what other people think. Doesn't matter if people are judging you, especially at a time like this when customers and revenue and sales may be hard to come by. You need to do what's best for you and what's best for the business. So be objective and make decisions rationally based on that. The last thing we talked about that I want to mention here was lean into your relationships. So whether that's with a business partner, or we also got into talking about wholesalers a little bit, lean into those relationships. They don't just happen overnight. And I was laughing when Mark was talking about some of the sales reps that he actually is friends with, because that's how we feel here at the pharmacy with some of our better sales reps and companies we have a better relationship with. And not that you go into these relationships saying, oh, I'm going to be able to use you guys for X, Y, Z. But if you give most of your business to people like that and you help them, they will be willing to help you in the long run too. And Mark experienced this as well, but we have here too, especially during COVID when we really, really needed some help with inventory or, a little bit of, working with us on some of the financing and that kind of stuff. Those were the people, the ones we had the better relationships with and the ones that we gave most of our business to, who we could rely on to help us through these tough times and truly be partners. So keep that in mind as you're going as well. The more you kind of lean into your better relationships, the more that they'll be able to help you back in the long run too. Thank you guys so much for checking out this episode. Please leave any comments, questions, whatever in the comments, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.